The Grand Nexus station floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower, its metal arms stretched out in all directions, each one bigger than most cities. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports. Today was special. Today, the 5 most powerful alien races would meet to show off their war fleets. Captain Li Wu walked through the station's main hall. His brown uniform looked plain next to the colorful clothes of the aliens around him. He carried a small data pad and tried not to stare at the strange beings he passed. Some had too many arms. Others had skin that glowed. A few floated in the air without touching the ground. The meeting room was huge. 5 tables sat in a circle, each one designed for a different type of alien. Li Wu found his small chair at the back of the room. He was here to watch and learn. The humans wanted to know what these powerful races could do. The first to speak was High Admiral Thexkar of the Valorian Empire. He stood 3 meters tall with blue skin that looked like metal. His 4 arms moved as he talked, and his voice boomed across the room. "Friends, allies, lesser beings," Thexkar began with a laugh that sounded like thunder. "You have all heard of our great fleet, but today I will tell you the truth about Valorian power." He waved one of his arms, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed a ship so big that it blocked out the stars behind it. The ship was black and covered in weapons that looked like they could destroy planets. "This is just one of our stellar devastators," Thexkar said with pride. "We have 500 of these beauties. Each one is the size of your small moons. Each one carries enough firepower to crack a world in half." The other aliens murmured with what sounded like respect, but Li Wu could hear jealousy in their voices too. "Our ships are powered by black holes," Thexkar continued. "Yes, you heard right. We capture black holes and use them as engines. The power is beyond anything you can imagine. With one shot from our main guns, we can turn a planet into space, dust. We have conquered 47 star systems with these ships alone." The hologram changed to show a battle. Valorian ships fired beams of energy that cut through enemy fleets like a hot knife through butter. Planets exploded in balls of fire. Space stations melted like ice in the sun. "The Helix Rebellion thought they could fight us," Thexkar laughed. "They had 10,000 ships. We destroyed them all in 6 hours. Their worlds burn to this day." Li Wu made notes on his datapad. He wrote down the ship sizes, the weapon types, and the number of vessels. The humans would want to know all of this. When Thexkar finished, Fleet Mind Zix Nova of the Christek Collective began to speak. She looked like a living crystal statue, clear and bright with light flowing through her body. When she talked, her voice sounded like music. "How crude," she said, and her words seemed to ring in the air. "You speak of destroying planets as if it takes skill. Any fool can break things. We of the Christek Collective create and destroy as we choose." Another hologram appeared. This one showed ships that looked alive. They moved like swimming fish and seemed to be made of the same crystal material as Zixanova herself. "Our ships are not built," she said. "They are grown. They are alive. When they take damage, they heal themselves. When they need to be stronger, they evolve. We have 300 biomechanical vessels, and each one learns from every battle." The hologram showed a Christek ship being hit by enemy fire. Holes appeared in its hull, but then the holes closed up like wounds healing. The ship grew new armor that was thicker than before. "But that is not our greatest gift," Zix Nova continued. "Watch this." The hologram showed a Christek ship flying toward an enemy fleet. As the enemies fired at it, the ship seemed to become like smoke. The enemy weapons passed right through it without doing any damage. Then the ship became solid again, but now it was inside the enemy formation. "We can phase through matter itself," Zixanova said with pride. "Your thick armor means nothing to us. Your shields cannot stop us. We appear inside your ships and tear them apart from within." The Mordak Empire learned this lesson when we took their homeworld without firing a single shot from outside their defenses. Li Wu wrote faster. This technology was something the humans had never seen before. It could change everything about how space battles were fought. War Chief Kethran of the Void Hunters spoke next. He looked like a shadow that had learned to walk. His body was dark and seemed to shift and move even when he was standing still. His red eyes glowed in what might have been his face. "Amateurs," he hissed, and his voice sounded like wind through a graveyard. You speak of healing ships and phase technology as if these things matter. True power comes from being unseen until it is too late. His hologram showed empty space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, ships appeared from nowhere. They looked like they were made of darkness itself, and they moved without making any sound. "We are the masters of stealth," Kethran said. "Our ships exist partially in shadow space, a dimension that touches yours but cannot be seen. We can travel from any point to any other point instantly. We can appear behind your strongest defenses without warning." The hologram showed Void Hunter ships attacking a massive space fortress. The fortress had thousands of defensive guns and sensor arrays, but none of them detected the attackers until the ships were already inside the base. "We have 400 ships in our main fleet," Kethran continued. "But you will never see them coming. We destroyed the entire Keltharian deep fleet while they slept in their beds. They never even knew we were there until their ships were already dead around them." The demonstration showed how Void Hunter ships could appear inside enemy vessels, destroy the crew, and disappear again before anyone knew what happened. It was like watching ghosts fight a war. "Your fancy weapons and healing ships mean nothing if you cannot hit what you cannot see," Kethran finished with what might have been a smile. Grand Marshal Vexthul of the Plasma Lords rose next. He did not have a solid body at all. Instead, he looked like a being made of pure fire and lightning contained in a suit of energy armor. When he spoke, the air around him grew hot. "Children playing with toys," he said, and his voice crackled like a forest fire. "You speak of ships made, of metal and crystal, as if these things have meaning. We are beings of pure energy. Our ships are made of plasma contained in force fields." His hologram showed vessels that looked like captured stars. They glowed so bright that Li Wu had to shield his eyes even though he was only looking at a projection. "Our ships can reach temperatures of 100 million degrees, Vexthul said with pride. "We can melt through any armor ever created. We can turn your precious battleships into puddles of liquid metal in seconds." The demonstration showed Plasma Lord ships attacking an enemy fleet. Where their weapons touched, metal simply ceased to exist. Huge battleships melted like wax figures left in the sun. "We have 350 ships of living fire," Vexthul continued. "Each one burns with the heat of a star's core. The Zenthari Confederation tried to fight us with their best armor. We turned their entire fleet into a cloud of hot gas in less than an hour." Finally, Queen Mother Lix-Ara of the Hive Swarm spoke. She looked like a giant insect with too many eyes and wings that buzzed constantly. Her voice was actually many voices speaking together. "Numbers," she said in her chorus of voices. "All of your fleets combined cannot match our numbers. You have hundreds of ships. We have thousands upon thousands." Her hologram showed space filled with small ships. There were so many that they looked like clouds of angry insects. Each ship was small, but together they covered the stars. "We have 10,000 combat vessels," Lix-Ara said. "Each one is controlled by the hive mind. They move as one. They think as one. They fight as one. When one ship dies, the others learn from its death and become stronger." The demonstration showed the hive swarm attacking a defended world. The enemy had strong ships and good weapons, but the swarm simply overwhelmed them with numbers. For every swarm ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. "We stripped the worlds of the Tellus Republic bare in 6 hours, Lix-Ara said with satisfaction. "Every plant, every building, every scrap of metal. Our ships consumed it all and used it to build more ships. The Republic had good defenses, but they could not fight an endless tide." Li Wu finished his notes and looked around the room. Each alien race seemed confident that their fleet was the strongest. Each had conquered many worlds and defeated many enemies. They looked at each other with a mixture of respect and rivalry, but none of them had asked about the human fleet yet. The 5 alien leaders sat back in their chairs with satisfied looks on their faces. They had each told stories of great victories and powerful fleets. The room buzzed with energy as they began to argue about whose ships were truly the strongest. "Hi." Admiral Thexkar crossed his 4 blue arms and laughed. "Your phase technology is interesting, crystal being, but what good is it against a weapon that can destroy entire star systems? Fleet mind." Zix Nova's crystal body pulsed with bright light. Destruction without precision is the mark of a primitive mind. Our ships adapt and learn. Your crude planet crackers would be useless against vessels that evolve faster than you can. Target them! War Chief Kethron's shadow form rippled with amusement. Both of you speak as if your enemies will stand still and wait to be hit. My ships strike without warning from dimensions you cannot even see. Grand Marshal Vexthal's fiery form grew brighter. Stealth means nothing when my plasma burns hot enough to melt space itself. Your shadow ships will be nothing but vapor before they can attack. Queen Mother Lixara's many voices buzzed together. You all think in terms of single battles. War is about resources and numbers. We can replace our losses faster than any of you can count them. As the argument grew louder, Captain Li Wu cleared his throat softly. The sound was barely heard over the alien voices, but somehow it cut through the noise. The 5 leaders turned to look at him with expressions that ranged from surprise to amusement. Forgive me, Li Wu said in his quiet voice. He stood up from his small chair and bowed slightly. I do not wish to interrupt such important discussions, but humanity would like to contribute to the Galactic Defense Network. The room fell silent for a moment. Then High Admiral Thexkar began to laugh. His booming voice echoed off the metal walls until the other aliens joined in. Soon the entire room was filled with the sounds of alien laughter. The human wants to contribute, Thexkar said between laughs. How adorable. Tell us, little human, what could your species possibly offer to beings such as us? Fleet Mind. Zixanova's musical voice rang with humor. Humans are barely 200 years out from their home world. They have only just learned to travel between stars. What could they know of real warfare? Li Wu remained standing calmly as the aliens laughed around him. He waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. We have built some ships, he said simply. We would be honored to serve alongside such magnificent fleets as yours. War Chief Kethran's red eyes glowed brighter with amusement. Some ships, he says. How many is some, little human? A dozen? 2 dozen of your primitive metal boxes? Our intelligence reports say humans use chemical rockets for propulsion, Grand Marshal Vexthal added with crackling laughter. Do you still burn fuel like ancient savages? Queen Mother Lixara's many voices buzzed together in what might have been sympathy. Do not worry, small ones. When the real threats come, we will protect you. Perhaps you can carry supplies for our great fleets. That would be useful. Li Wu nodded politely. That is very kind of you to offer protection. Admiral Park Jin is on his way here with a small escort. He wishes to demonstrate what humanity can contribute to our mutual defense. The aliens exchanged glances that mixed amusement with slight curiosity. A demonstration by the primitive humans might be entertaining at least. A demonstration? Thexkar asked with a grin that showed teeth like metal spikes. How delightful. We would be honored to watch your little ships perform their tricks. Commander Kim Hai, who had been sitting silently in another corner of the room, finally spoke up. If I may ask some technical questions while we wait for Admiral Park Jin? Her voice was professional and polite. I am fascinated by your advanced technologies. The aliens preened at the compliment. They loved talking about their superior abilities to lesser races. Of course, young human, Fleetmind Zixnova said graciously. What would you like to know about our crystal ship technology? Kim Hai pulled out her own datapad and began asking questions. She wanted to know about power consumption for the phase drives, how long the healing process took for damaged biomechanical ships, and what materials were used in their construction. Zixnova answered happily, not noticing how specific and pointed the human's questions were. To her, these seemed like the simple curiosity of a primitive mind trying to understand superior technology. Meanwhile, Li Wu had started a conversation with War Chief Kethran about stealth systems. Your shadow space technology sounds amazing, he said with genuine interest. How do your ships maintain formation when they cannot see each other in that dimension? Kethran found himself explaining the quantum communication systems that linked his ships across dimensional barriers. He was proud of the technology and enjoyed showing off his knowledge to someone who seemed appropriately impressed. Grand Marshal Vexithul was telling another human officer about plasma containment fields and the complex mathematics needed to keep star-hot temperatures from burning through their own ships. The human asked intelligent questions about energy conversion rates and cooling systems. Even Queen Mother Lixara found herself discussing hive mind communication protocols with a human scientist who seemed fascinated by how thousands of individual ship minds could work together as one. Only High Admiral Thexkar remained somewhat suspicious. "You humans ask very specific questions," he said to Li Wu. "These are not the questions of tourists or diplomats." Li Wu smiled and shrugged. "We are a curious species. When we see something impressive, we want to understand how it works. It is just our nature." "Curiosity can be dangerous," Thexkar warned, but his tone was more amused than threatening. "Be careful you do not learn things that might give you ideas above your station." "Of course," Li Wu agreed. "We know our place in the galaxy." That moment, alarms began to sound throughout the station. A voice spoke over the communication system in the calm tones of the station's artificial intelligence. "Attention all vessels. Priority message incoming from Human Fleet Command for Captain Li Wu. Admiral Park Jin's escort fleet has arrived at the outer marker and requests permission to approach." The aliens looked at each other with renewed interest. The human demonstration was about to begin. "How many ships did your admiral bring?" Fleet Mind Zixnova asked with curiosity. "Admiral Park Jin mentioned a small escort," Li Wu replied. "Perhaps 50 vessels." War Chief Kethron made a sound that might have been approval. 50 ships is not nothing for such a young race. We will be interested to see what your people consider worthy of a fleet admiral." Through the room's massive viewing windows, they could see space beginning to ripple with the energy of ships coming out of hyperspace. The first vessel to appear was sleek and dark, about the size of a Valorian cruiser but with sharp angles that looked somehow aggressive. Despite its relatively small size, more ships followed, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. They were all dark gray or black, with minimal external lights. Their designs looked practical rather than decorative, built for function rather than beauty. "Interesting," Grand Marshal Vex Thule said, as his fiery form pulsed with curiosity. "Their ships look efficient." Queen Mother Lixara's many voices buzzed with analysis. "Clean lines, no wasted space. These vessels are designed by minds that understand war." High Admiral Thexkar studied the human fleet through the window with growing interest. "They are smaller than our stellar devastators, but they move well. See how precisely they maintain formation. The human ships arranged themselves in a defensive pattern around the Grand Nexus Station. Even the aliens had to admit that the formation was professionally executed. The ships moved like they had been working together for years. Impressive. Discipline, Fleet Mind Zixnova admitted. For a young race, they show remarkable coordination. Captain Li Wu received a message on his communicator. "Admiral Park Jin is ready to begin the demonstration whenever you give permission," he told the alien leaders. War Chief Kethron waved one shadowy hand. "By all means, let us see what your admiral wishes to show us." "What kind of demonstration will this be?" Grand Marshal Vexthul asked. Li Wu consulted his communicator again. "Admiral Park Jin suggests a series of tests. First, a display of firepower against some asteroids, then defensive capabilities. Finally, maneuverability exercises." The aliens nodded approvingly. These were reasonable tests that would show the basic capabilities of any fleet. "We accept," High Admiral Thexkar declared. "Let your admiral show us what humanity can do." As they watched, the human fleet began to move into position for their demonstration. The ships spread out in a precise pattern, each one moving to an exact location with mechanical precision. Commander Kim Hai had stopped asking technical questions and was now watching the fleet movements with professional interest. She made notes on her datapad about ship spacing and formation tactics. "Your admiral seems to know his business," Fleet Mind Zixnova commented. "These formations are quite proper for a military display." "Admiral Park Jin has been in fleet command for 20 years, Li Wu replied. "He is very experienced." 20 years, Queen Mother Lixara mused. "That is a long time for such a short-lived species. He must be quite skilled to hold command for so long." Through the viewing window, they could see asteroids being moved into position for the firepower demonstration. Admiral Park Jin's voice came through the communication system with calm authority. This is Admiral Park Jin of the Human Defense Fleet. Beginning demonstration sequence Alpha. All stations prepare for firepower display. The 5 alien leaders pressed closer to the viewing windows, eager to see what the primitive humans considered impressive weapons. High Admiral Thexkar had already begun pouring himself a glass of Valorian battle wine, expecting to be entertained by a pathetic display. "Look at their targeting systems," Fleet Mind Zixnova said with musical laughter. "So crude and mechanical. They must manually aim each weapon." War Chief Kethron's shadow form rippled with amusement. "Watch how slowly they move. My ships could destroy their entire fleet before they finished lining up their first shot." In space, 50 human ships had arranged themselves in a perfect line facing the asteroid field. Each ship was exactly the same distance from its neighbors, creating a formation that looked like it had been drawn with a ruler. Captain Yunha's destroyer, the UES Busan's Edge, took the lead position. Her ship was one of the smaller vessels in the formation, sleek and angular with weapon ports that ran along its hull like the teeth of a metal shark. "Target acquisition complete," came Captain Yunha's voice over the communication channel. "All ships report ready for synchronized firing." The aliens exchanged glances. Synchronized firing was an advanced tactic that required excellent coordination, but they assumed the humans were just trying to make their weak weapons look more impressive through teamwork. "Firing in 3, 2, 1, Admiral Park Jin announced. What happened next made every alien in the room fall silent. The human ships fired as one. 50 magnetic accelerator cannons spoke at exactly the same moment, sending solid metal projectiles racing toward the asteroid field at incredible speed. The rounds were invisible to the naked eye, moving so fast that they seemed to teleport from the ships to their targets. The first asteroid, a rock the size of a city, simply disappeared. One moment it was there. The next moment, it was a cloud of dust and debris. The Mac round had punched through it with such force that the rock exploded from the inside out. But that was just the beginning. The second asteroid was larger, almost the size of a small moon. The human projectile hit it dead center and kept going, punching a hole clean through the entire mass. The rock hung in space for a moment with a perfectly round tunnel through its middle, then slowly broke apart into 2 halves. The third target was even more impressive. 3 asteroids had been chained together with metal cables for the test. The human round hit the first rock, passed through it completely, struck the second asteroid and punched through that as well, then hit the third target and vaporized it entirely. All 3 asteroids were destroyed by a single shot. Grand Marshal Vex Thul's fiery form had dimmed with surprise. That projectile maintained its energy through 3 separate impacts. The kinetic force required for such penetration is impossible. Queen Mother Lixara finished in her chorus of voices. No conventional weapon should retain that much power after multiple strikes. High Admiral Thexkar had set down his wine glass without taking a sip. His 4 blue arms were crossed as he studied the human fleet with new interest. "What kind of metal are they using for those projectiles?" Captain Li Wu consulted his datapad. "Depleted uranium core with tungsten carbide jacket and gravitational compression enhancement." The aliens stared at him. Gravitational compression was a technology that most species did not develop until they had been spacefaring for at least 1,000 years. "How did humans learn gravitational compression?" Fleet Mind Zixnova asked with concern in her musical voice. "We studied the wreckage from a battle between the Helix Rebellion and some unknown attackers," Li Wu replied honestly. "Our scientists reverse-engineered the technology and improved upon it." War Chief Kethron's red eyes glowed brighter. "You took technology from a battlefield and made it better?" "We learn from everyone," Li Wu said with a slight smile. "It is our way." Admiral Park Jin's voice came through the communication system again. "Beginning defensive capability demonstration. UES Mokpo's shield will serve as the test subject." A human cruiser moved away from the formation and positioned itself in the center of the asteroid field. The ship was larger than the destroyers, with thick armor plating and what looked like multiple defensive systems mounted across its hull. "The volunteers will now simulate attacks using reduced power settings," Admiral Park Jin announced. "Any fleet that wishes to test our defenses may do so." High Admiral Thexkar straightened in surprise. "They want us to shoot at their ship?" Reduce power only, Captain Li Wu assured them. Just enough to test the defensive systems without causing real damage. The Valorian admiral considered this. It was an unusual request, but he was curious to see how human defenses compared to his own weapons. Very well. Charging main plasma cannon to 15% power. The massive Valorian dreadnought Stellar Conquest turned its weapons toward the human cruiser. Even at reduced power, the plasma cannon glowed with enough energy to melt through most ship armor. Fire when ready, came Captain Choi Bin's calm voice from the human cruiser. The plasma beam lanced out across space, a brilliant line of superheated energy that struck the human ship directly amidships. The aliens expected to see the cruiser's armor melt and buckle under the assault. Instead, the ship's shields flared to life in a brilliant display of blue energy. The plasma beam hit the shields and simply stopped, its energy being absorbed and redirected harmlessly into space. But that was not the most impressive part. As the beam continued to strike the shields, the defensive barrier began to change color. It shifted from blue to green to yellow, and the energy pattern became more complex. The shields were learning, adapting to the specific frequency and composition of the Valorian weapon. Impossible, High Admiral Thexkar breathed. Those shields are evolving in real time. When the plasma beam finally stopped, the human cruiser's shields had not only held, but had actually grown stronger. The barrier now pulsed with energy patterns. That perfectly countered Valorian weapons technology. Our turn, Fleet Mind Zixnova said with interest. One of her crystal ships moved into position and activated its phase beam, a weapon that could pass through most forms of matter. The beam struck the human cruiser and should have passed right through the shields to damage the hull beneath. But the human shields adapted again. This time, they shifted into a crystalline pattern that matched the frequency of the Crystech weapon. The phase beam struck the adapted shields and was reflected back toward its source, forcing the crystal ship to dodge its own attack. Those shields just learned to counter phase technology in seconds, Zixnova said with growing alarm. That should take years of study and development. War Chief Kethron decided to test the human defenses with his own weapons. His shadow ship fired a darkness beam, a weapon that existed partially in shadow space and should have been impossible to defend against with conventional shields. The human shields flickered for a moment as they encountered the interdimensional attack. Then they began to pulse with dark energy, creating a barrier that existed in both normal space and shadow space simultaneously. The darkness beam was stopped cold. They just learned to operate in shadow space, Kethran said in disbelief. No one learns shadow technology that quickly. Grand Marshal Vexathul and Queen Mother Lixara both tested the human defenses with their own weapons. Each time, the shields adapted and learned to counter the new threat. By the end of the test, the human cruiser was protected by a defensive barrier that had evolved to resist every major weapons technology in the galaxy. How is this possible? Grand Marshal Vexthul demanded. Adaptive shields require quantum computers the size of moons to process that much information. Dr. Jiang Min, a human scientist who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, finally spoke up. Our ships use artificial intelligence networks for defensive calculations. Each ship's AI can process millions of possible threat scenarios simultaneously and adapt in real time. The aliens looked at each other with growing unease. Artificial intelligence was a dangerous technology that most species avoided or strictly controlled. The humans seemed to use it casually. Beginning maneuverability demonstration, Admiral Park Jin announced. The human fleet began to move in ways that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about space combat. The ships changed direction without the momentum shifts that normally affected vessels in space. They spun and rolled and accelerated in patterns that should have been impossible. Captain Yun Ha's destroyer performed a maneuver that made even the experienced alien commanders gasp. Her ship was flying toward an asteroid at full speed when it suddenly reversed direction without slowing down. The ship had simply flipped end over end while maintaining its velocity, then accelerated away from the asteroid it had been approaching. Those inertial dampeners are beyond anything we have seen, Queen Mother Lixara said with concern. The crew should have been turned to paste by those acceleration forces. Our artificial gravity systems compensate for inertial effects, Captain, Li Wu explained casually. The crew feels no acceleration regardless of how the ship moves. The human ships continued their demonstration. The demonstration had just ended when alarms began blaring throughout the Grand Nexus station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the calm voice of the station's artificial intelligence was replaced by urgent warnings. Emergency alert. Emergency alert. Massive fleet approaching from hyperspace. All defensive systems activate immediately. This is not a drill. The 5 alien leaders rushed to the main tactical display as data began flowing across the screens. What they saw made their confidence vanish instantly. 2,000 ships, War Chief Kethran said in disbelief, his shadow form rippling with tension. The Crimson Tide pirate fleet. They should not be able to operate in civilized space. High Admiral Thexkar's 4 blue arms moved quickly over his personal communicator. How did they get past the outer sensor nets? My stellar devastators were supposed to be patrolling those sectors. Fleet Mind Zix Nova's crystal body pulsed with rapid light as she processed the tactical data. They are demanding tribute from all species present. Standard pirate protocol. Pay or be destroyed. The pirate fleet was massive beyond anything seen in recent years. Their ships were a mix of stolen vessels from dozens of different species, all painted in the blood-red colors that gave the Crimson Tide its name. At their head flew the flagship Blood Harvest, a converted Valorian dreadnought that bristled with weapons from every corner of the galaxy. Captain Razak Bloodfist's voice boomed across all communication channels. He was a Korthak, a species known for their savage nature and 6 arms that could tear through steel. Greetings, civilized fools. You know who we are. You know what we want. Surrender half your fleets or we will take them all. Queen Mother licks Aras. Many voices buzzed with rapid calculation. 2,000 ships against our combined forces. The numbers are close, but a battle here would destroy the station and everyone on it. Grand Marshal Vexthul's fiery form blazed brighter with anger. Pirates dare to threaten us? Let them come. My plasma ships will turn their stolen fleet into cosmic dust. But even as the alien leaders spoke of battle, they were all making the same calculations. The Crimson Tide was one of the largest pirate fleets ever assembled. Even with their combined forces, victory would come at a terrible cost. Captain Li Wu had been quietly observing the tactical display. Now he activated his communicator with the same calm manner he had shown throughout the day. "This is Captain Li Wu to Home Fleet Command," he said in his quiet voice. "We have a pirate situation at the Grand Nexus station, requesting standard patrol response." The alien leaders turned to stare at him. Standard patrol response? Against 2,000 pirate ships? The reply came back immediately in the crisp voice of a human communications officer. "Acknowledged, Captain Li Wu. Task Force Saber is already en route. Estimated time of arrival? 4 minutes. High Admiral Thexkar laughed despite the situation. "A task force? Against the Crimson Tide? How many ships is your species sending to die with us?" Captain Li Wu checked his communicator again. "Task. Force Saber consists of approximately 8,000 vessels under the command of Captain Moon J." The room fell completely silent. 8,000 ships? Fleet Mind Zix Nova whispered. "That is impossible. No species has that many vessels in a single task force." "You must mean 800, War Chief Kethran said with certainty. "Or perhaps 80. The translation systems must be malfunctioning." Li Wu shook his head politely. 8,000 is correct. It is a standard patrol response for pirate threats of this magnitude. Before any of the aliens could respond, space began to tear open near the station. But this was not the small portal that had brought Admiral Park Jin's 50 ships. This was a hyperspace gateway that stretched across kilometers of empty space, large enough for entire fleets to pass through. What emerged from that gateway defied comprehension. First came the destroyers, sleek dark ships that moved in perfect formation. There were hundreds of them, then thousands, all identical and all moving with mechanical precision. Behind the destroyers came cruisers, larger vessels with heavier armor and more weapons. They emerged from hyperspace in ordered ranks, each one taking its assigned position in the growing formation. Then came the battleships, massive vessels that dwarfed even the largest Valorian dreadnoughts. Their hulls were covered in weapon ports, and their engines burned with contained nuclear fire. "This cannot be real," High Admiral Thexkar said, in a voice barely above a whisper. "No species builds fleets this large." But the ships kept coming. Heavy cruisers emerged by the dozen, their hulls bristling with the magnetic accelerator cannons the aliens had seen demonstrated earlier. Assault carriers launched clouds of fighters, small craft that moved like schools of metallic fish. War. Chief Kethran counted ships until his mind refused to process the numbers. 5,000, 6,000. They just keep coming. The human fleet arranged itself around the Grand Nexus station in a defensive formation that looked like a work of art. Every ship knew exactly where to go. Every vessel took its position without confusion or delay. Captain Moon Jae's voice cut across all communication frequencies with the authority of someone who had commanded fleets in real battles. This is Captain Moon Jae of the Human Defense Fleet. Crimson Tide vessels, you have exactly 30 seconds to surrender or be destroyed. This is your only warning. Captain Razak Bloodfist's response was immediate and predictable. Human dogs, you think your numbers impress us? We are the Crimson Tide. We fear nothing. But as he spoke, his own fleet was already beginning to change formation. The pirates had expected to face perhaps 1,000 ships from the 5 alien species combined. Instead, they found themselves staring at a human fleet that outnumbered them 4-1. 30 seconds have passed, Captain Moon Jae announced with the same calm tone. All human vessels, weapons free. Destroy the pirate fleet. What happened next was not a battle. It was an execution. The human ships opened fire as one, 8,000 vessels unleashing their weapons simultaneously. The magnetic accelerator cannons spoke with voices like thunder, sending projectiles racing across space at significant fractions of light speed. The Crimson Tide's stolen ships began to die by the dozens, then by the hundreds. The pirates had good shields and decent armor, but they were facing weapons that had been specifically designed to punch through any defense. Captain Razak Bloodfist tried to rally his forces, but it was hopeless. His ships were being destroyed faster than he could count them. Everywhere he looked, pirate vessels were exploding or breaking apart under the relentless human assault. "Retreat!" he finally screamed into his communicator. "All ships retreat! Emergency jump to hyperspace!" The surviving pirates, perhaps 500 ships out of the original 2,000, fled into hyperspace without firing a single shot in return. The entire battle had lasted less than 3 minutes. In the sudden silence that followed, the alien leaders stood frozen at the viewing windows. They stared at the human fleet in complete shock, trying to process what they had just witnessed. 8,000 ships, Queen Mother Lixara said in her chorus of voices. 8,000 ships in a single task force. How many fleets do humans have? Admiral Park Jin's voice came through the communication system to answer her question. Task Force Saber is one of 12 patrol groups assigned to this sector. We have similar forces protecting each of our colony worlds and trade routes. High Admiral Thexkar did quick calculations in his head. 12 task forces of 8,000 ships each. That is nearly 100,000 vessels. The patrol fleets are not our main battle groups, Captain Li Wu said quietly. Those are much larger. Fleet mind. Zix Nova's crystal form had become so dim it was almost transparent. How much larger? The home defense fleet consists of 50,000 ships, Li Wu replied. There are 8 home defense fleets protecting our core worlds. War Chief Kethran's shadow form seemed to collapse in on itself. 400,000 ships. You have 400,000 warships. Those are just the active duty vessels, Dr. Jiang Min added helpfully. We also maintain reserve fleets and construction facilities that can build additional ships as needed. Grand Marshal Vex Thul's fiery form flickered like a candle in the wind. How many reserve ships? Approximately 1.2 million vessels in various states of readiness, Dr. Jiang Min said as he consulted his datapad, plus manufacturing capacity for about 50,000 new ships per year. The aliens stared at the humans in absolute silence. In the space of one afternoon, they had gone from seeing humanity as a primitive young species to realizing they were facing the largest military force in galactic history. Why? Fleet Mind Zix Nova finally asked. Why do you build so many ships? What threat requires such massive fleets? Captain Li Wu looked around the room at the 5 alien leaders who had spent the day boasting about their own military might. We learned early that the galaxy is a dangerous place. There are always threats from somewhere. pirates, hostile species, unknown aliens from dark space. We decided it was better to be prepared. But surely you do not need so many ships just for defense, High Admiral Thexkar said with concern in his voice. You are right, Li Wu agreed. We do not need this many ships for defense. But we found that when people know we have this capability, they usually choose to talk rather than fight. The silence in the meeting room stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. The 5 alien leaders stood frozen, their minds struggling to process what they had witnessed. Outside the viewing windows, the massive human fleet was already departing, their ships disappearing into hyperspace as efficiently as they had arrived. High Admiral Thexkar was the first to break the silence. His 4 blue arms hung at his sides as he stared at the tactical display that still showed the positions where 8,000 human ships had been moments before. By the void, he whispered. We have been fools, complete and utter fools, fleet mind. Zix Nova's crystal body pulsed with confused patterns of light. I do not understand. How did we not know? How did our intelligence services miss a fleet of this magnitude? Captain Li Wu checked his datapad and answered honestly. Your intelligence services did not miss our fleets. They simply classified them as defensive forces protecting human space. Since we rarely operate outside our own territory, most species assumed we were a minor power with limited capabilities. War Chief Ketharan's shadow form rippled with what might have been bitter laughter. We saw what we expected to see. A young species with a small fleet staying close to their home worlds. We never considered that you might be choosing to stay home rather than being forced to. Commander Kim Hai, who had been quietly observing the alien reactions, stepped forward. If I may offer some perspective, she said in her professional voice, your species all follow predictable patterns. When you develop military power, you use it to expand your territory and demonstrate your strength. Humans learned a different approach. What approach? Grand Marshal Vexthul asked, his fiery form dimming to a more conversational brightness. We learned from history, Kim Hai replied. On our homeworld, the greatest military powers often collapsed because they spent too much energy on conquest and not enough on development. We decided to build strength for protection, not expansion. Queen Mother Lixara's many voices buzzed with curiosity. But surely with such power, you must have been tempted to take what you wanted from weaker species. Dr. Jiang Min answered this. Time. Why would we take from others when we can build our own? Conquest is expensive and inefficient. It is much easier to trade for what we need and focus our efforts on research and development. Admiral Park Jin's voice came through the communication system. Captain Li Wu, we are ready to depart if the demonstration is complete. Task Force Saber has cleared the pirate threat and is returning to patrol duties. High Admiral Thexkar suddenly stepped forward. Wait, before you leave, I must ask, the fleet we just saw, how does it compare to your other forces? There was a pause before Admiral Park Jin replied. Task Force Saber is a standard patrol group. We have larger forces available if needed. How much larger? Fleet Mind Zix Nova asked, with growing concern. The home defense fleets each contain 50,000 vessels, Admiral Park Jin said matter-of-factly. The strategic reserve includes additional specialized units, but those are for extreme emergencies only. War Chief Ketharan made a sound like wind through a graveyard. Extreme emergencies? What could possibly require more firepower than what we just witnessed? Captain Li Wu looked around the room at the alien faces. We have encountered things in deep space that you have not yet met. Ancient automated defense systems left by long-dead civilizations, hive minds that consume entire star systems, machine intelligences that view organic life as raw materials. The aliens exchanged worried glances. These were threats they had heard rumors about but never taken seriously. The galaxy is vast, Li Wu continued. Most species explore only the regions close to their home worlds. Humans have sent survey fleets to the edge of known space and beyond. We have seen what waits in the darkness between the stars. Our fleets are built to face those threats if they ever turn towards civilized space. Grand Marshal Vexthul's voice crackled with concern. And you face these threats alone? So far, Captain Li Wu replied. But we would prefer to have allies. That is why we are here today. High Admiral Thexkar straightened his massive frame and looked directly at Li Wu. You could have conquered us all. With the fleets you command, you could have taken our worlds and made us your subjects. Why did you not? Because conquest creates enemies, Li Wu said simply. Allies create strength. We would rather have 5 strong friends than 5 conquered, territories that require constant military occupation. Fleet mind. Zix Nova's crystal form began to pulse with brighter light as she processed this philosophy. You see military power as a tool for creating partnerships rather than dominance. Exactly, Commander Kim Hai confirmed. A conquered enemy will always look for opportunities to rebel. A willing ally will fight beside you when real threats emerge. Queen Mother Lixara's many voices spoke together in harmonious tones. This is a wisdom that the hive swarm can appreciate. When all parts work together willingly, the whole becomes stronger than any individual component. War Chief Kethron's red eyes glowed with what might have been respect. You fight like warriors but think like diplomats. It is an interesting combination. Captain Yoon Ha's voice came through the communication system from her destroyer. Admiral, Park Jin, we are receiving priority communications from Home Fleet Command. New survey data from the Outer Rim sectors. Admiral Park Jin's reply carried a note of concern. What kind of data, Captain Yoon Ha? Long-range sensors have detected movement in the Void sector, Yoon Ha reported. Something large is heading toward the Galactic Rim. Estimated arrival in 18 months. The alien leaders listened to this exchange with growing alarm. They had never heard humans speak with concern about anything, but this news clearly worried the human fleet commanders. What is in the Void sector? High Admiral Thexkar asked. Captain Li Wu consulted his datapad, then looked up with a serious expression. Automated war machines left behind by a species that died out 50 million years ago. We thought they were dormant, but something appears to have activated them. How many machines? Fleet Mind Zix Nova asked with musical tones that carried fear. Our long-range surveys detected approximately 10 million units of various sizes, Dr. Jiang Min replied. From fighter-sized drones to constructs the size of moons. They appear to be programmed to eliminate all organic life. The room fell silent. As the aliens absorbed this information, 10 million ancient war machines heading towards civilized space would be a threat beyond anything any individual species could handle. This is why you build such large fleets, War Chief Kethron said with understanding. You prepare for threats that have not yet arrived. Yes, Li Wu confirmed, and this is why we want allies. When those machines reach inhabited space, we will need every ship and every species working together to stop them. Grand Marshal Vex Thul's fiery form blazed brighter with determination. The Plasma Lords will stand with humanity against this threat. Our ships may not be as numerous as yours, but they burn hot enough to melt any metal. The Christek Collective will also join this alliance, Fleet Mind Zix Nova declared. Our biomechanical ships can adapt to any enemy technology, including ancient war machines. High Admiral Thexkar crossed his forearms and nodded firmly. The Valorian Empire has never backed down from a fight. Our stellar devastators will crack those machines like nuts. Queen Mother Lixara's many voices buzzed with resolution. The hive swarm brings numbers and coordination. We will swarm their machines and tear them apart. War Chief Kethron's shadow form seemed to solidify with purpose. The Void Hunters will use our stealth technology to strike at their command units. Ancient machines cannot fight what they cannot detect. Captain Li Wu smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Then we have an alliance. 5 species plus humanity, working together to defend civilized space. Admiral Park Jin's voice came through the communication system with approval. Welcome to the Galactic Defense Alliance. We will begin coordinating our technologies and tactics immediately. Commander Kim Hai activated her datapad and began making notes. We will need to establish joint training exercises, share our adaptive shield technology, and coordinate our ship designs for maximum effectiveness. Our crystal ships can carry Valorian planet crackers, Fleet Mind Zix Nova suggested. The mighty combination of our mobility with their firepower could be devastating. Void Hunter stealth systems could hide Plasma Lord ships until they are close enough to melt enemy vessels, War Chief Kethron added. High Admiral Thexkar's tactical mind began working on the possibilities. Hive swarm coordination networks. Could control human fighter squadrons for perfect formation attacks. As the aliens began discussing integration possibilities, Captain Li Wu quietly observed their enthusiasm. In the space of a few hours, they had gone from arrogant competitors to eager allies. Dr. Jiang Min approached Li Wu and spoke quietly. "Do you think they understand what we are really asking of them?" Li Wu nodded slowly. "They understand that the ancient machines are a real threat. They understand that humanity has the largest fleet in the galaxy. Most importantly, they understand that we are choosing to work with them rather than ruling over them. And if the machines prove to be less of a threat than our projections suggest?" Dr. Jiang Min asked.